So you don't mind, I'm going to record this so we can use.
Let me put the volume up.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Sorry, I'm a bit late.
No, no problem. No problem at all. It's more important that you're working with the dancers than that you're on the Zoom.
Thank you.
So,
First of all, excuse my English. Huh? I have a very bad English. Huh?
well, it's much better than my French. So,
Very good. Bon.
no, it's fine. And so good. So we're recording this, and if it's all right, we may use excerpts to promote
Okay. Good
performance. And so good. Well, thank you again. So I've got a few questions, and we'll just go through it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So before we talk about Swan Lake, which is what we're going to mostly talk about, I wanted to ask you about how important touring is to your company. You know, you have such a beautiful home in Aix-en-Provence, a beautiful center, but I know you're on the road a lot in Europe and also beyond Europe. Why is touring important to the company?
I think it's in the DNA, no, comment on dit, c'est ça, of the company to tour. From the beginning, we had a lot of pleasure to turn, and it's our vocation.
Yes.
And the dancer love it, and finally, I have the feeling that they work for that in a certain way. Wonderful. To show their art to the audience of all over the world, and it's really fantastic to do that. I know now it's more difficult than before, but it's still a pleasure.
Well, we're so glad that finally you can tour this piece, and I had hoped to see it about 3 years ago, and then COVID came, but so no, thank you. That's a great. You know, one of the things we think a lot about is we've had a very special relationship with the company. You were here in our first season. You've come back many times. Blanche-Neige was the centerpiece of our 10th anniversary, and now Swan Lake is the similar role in our 20th. Can you say a little bit about how the company feels when it returns frequently to a venue like the Mondavi Center and has that kind of relationship?
I think Mondavi is something very special. I remember the moment when we met all your donors and all your friends and all the people you bring to the performance. It was really fantastic for me and also for the dancer, and that's why we love to tour. To have tour, because we meet people from our other countries, and it's a cultural exchange, very deep and very important for us.
It very much so, indeed, and that was we certainly had a wonderful evening around Blanche-Neige, and Margaret Mondavi, who's not with us anymore. She was there, and of course her French is very good, and so that was a help. But one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was, you know, you periodically have chosen as a choreographer to return to full-length story ballets. Romeo and Juliet, which I was fortunate enough to see in Marseille, and it's fantastic. Snow White, Blanche-Neige, and now Swan Lake. And I was going to ask you, how does your process when you create these kind of works differ from the more abstract pieces in your repertoire?
It's a good question, because all the work I do in abstract work in the field of abstraction helped me a lot to build the material, the physical expression for the ballet with stories, and it's very important. And I like to have these two sides. One part is really a laboratory to work and to find things, to find new movement, to find a new combination of bodies. And this helped me a lot for the ballet with story. Yes, and because at what there is a moment finally what sees the audience is dance, and it's very nice. You have the story, but what you see in different sequence is really rich in terms of choreography, of choreographic material, and of combination. And I think it's very important to not to let the part of the écriture chorégraphique, and to bring it in the ballet story. Yeah.
So you're using, in a way, when you're making these abstract ballets, which are in themselves very, very beautiful and powerful, and we've brought a number of them, it's helping you to continue to evolve your choreographic language that you then use in these, telling these bigger stories.
Yeah, you know, it's like you have fundamental research, you know, and you have the technology that the people is using. And sometimes people can think, oh no, what is this fundamental research? What are these people just working with their brain and bringing nothing? But finally, this, after a while, bring evolution to the technology, for the medical, for everything. And finally, it's very useful for people. And for me, it's exactly the same process. In a certain way, I have my work of laboratory, and it helped for ballet more popular, and who are more accessible to people. Yes.
It's a great analogy, particularly since we're on a big research campus.
Yeah, I know
people,
that.
Yeah, people are doing basic research, and people are doing the applied research that then becomes the solutions to problems. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But I wanted then to ask you, you know, of course, as you've even commented, you know, people would say, well, why do another Swan Lake? You know, it's Swan Lake, this is an old story, and it's been done a number of times. But, you know, in your interpretation, you see it as a story that is very critical to issues of today. So
Yeah.
Can you tell us about it? And have you changed the story in order to enlighten us about things in our own time rather than things back in the 19th century?
Mm-hmm. You know, when I work on this kind of scale of performance, like Blanche-Neige, Snow White, and Swan Lake, I have three words is moving in my head, is text, pretext, and context, you know. And this is very important for me to help to work on the piece. The text is my my movement. It's my style, you know. The pretext is finally the story I chose to tell, you know. And the context is our epoch right now, what we live, what happened in this world. And I try to connect these three elements, and to try to bring something new to people, even with an old pretext, you know, and to put it in the context with my text, which is my dance, you know. Right. And when these three elements, these three concepts is connected, then I can consider maybe I get something.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I can remember seeing Romeo and Juliet, how, you know, the context there was a kind of, and which is very relevant today, was a kind of about an authoritarian situation and the oppression that was overlaid on that story, and it was very powerful.
Yeah. And concerning Swan Lake, it was very simple. In a certain way, I just read the title, Swan Lake. What is a swan in our context? Swan is an animal, is a bird, fantastic bird, wonderful bird. And my question was, next 20 years, maybe they will disappear, the swans. And, you know, actually, I heard that maybe 500 specimen of animals has completely despair of the planet. Then the swan can despair also, you know. And lake, Swan Lake, what is lake actually? You can see there is a lot of lake who are completely asséchés, dried, or pollués, comme on dit,
Polluted?
with pollution, you know, and they kill the fish and everything, you know. And then if the swan are a lake animal, they are in contact with water, then it gives me really the context of the problematic, the climatic problem, and I try to connect that to the story. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's very interesting because, you know, you're bringing this piece to our center, which is on a big research campus. And there are many scientists on this campus who are working on these problems. And we have an outpost in Bodega Bay, which is on the Pacific Ocean. And we have an outpost on Lake Tahoe, which is in the other direction, working on these issues of climate change, pollution, and the degradation of natural resources. And I was going to ask you, you know, obviously, so we've got science working on this. You're taking art through your dance to also try to enlighten us about climate change and these other issues. What do you think? How do you think art can shed light, perhaps, that maybe science can't?
I think, I'm not sure art can change something, but maybe it can give the sensation to people, to awake people. We can say that, and to give emotion to this problem, which is really effrayant. Frightening. C'est ça, effrayant? Oui, oui.
Yes. Yeah.
And to consider this same problem with emotion, and maybe less frightening, but maybe this can bring some solution in a certain way. I don't know.
Yeah, so it raises people's awareness.
Yes.
And without that awareness, change doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
So I think that's so important. I want to go back to your creative process. And it's striking in all of your story ballets in particular, your use of music. And you know, in Swan Lake, you don't just use music by Tchaikovsky from the ballet score, but you bring in other Tchaikovsky works. And then you have the 79D contemporary music, which, you know, is similar to what you did in your earlier story ballets. And I think you use it almost, I would say, almost to shocking effect. And can you say a bit about why you choose in your full-length ballet scores to mix in the classical, the original, you know, like Prokofiev and Tchaikovsky, and that with contemporary music?
It's based on the dramaturgy. I have my idea, I have my way of telling the story, and I have my dramaturgy, and I try really to find the good music for that. Well, mainly for Swan Lake, most of the music of Tchaikovsky was absolutely perfect. But because I changed some element of the story, I needed a certain moment to find something else. And then I go and I try to find in the symphony, for example, of Tchaikovsky, which was not right thing for the ballet, but more symphonic. And then I find some little treasure to bring it in the piece, and that fits better in my way of dramaturgy. Yes, and for certain other moment, I have need to have a more industrial sound to bring the idea of pollution, of industry, of, you know, of petrol machine, that, comment on dit,
Pipes.
the pipes, you know, you have
The
this
drilling. Yeah.
the
We have a
petrol.
lot of that in California.
Yeah. And then I need some sound who remain that, and that's why 79D helped me to bring also a more nightmare sound also. And this is very nice also because when you hear Tchaikovsky after that, it's even more beautiful because you give the desire to go back to Tchaikovsky. Yeah.
No, that's great. Yes, I totally get that. I wanted, wanted to ask you about, a scene like the disco party, which of course takes the contemporary music. And here you are in the midst of essentially this tragic story of Swan Lake. But then all of a sudden you have this amazing, highly energized scene. And tell us a bit about, why you do that, how that fits into your vision of what Swan Lake is about.
Now, this moment is based on a kind of party, which is the first act. And in this first act, you have a lot of music of Tchaikovsky, obviously. It is really a kind of fete, a party, yes. And there is a moment I wanted to show that these people are completely out of control and out of responsibility of what happened in the world, in the earth. And then they start to dance really like everything is okay, we just have pleasure and that's important, and the rest is we don't care for the rest. And I want to give this sensation to the audience. Yeah.
Well, you definitely do. And so much of the way that the setting of the ballet rather, comes through projections rather than through traditional scenery. And tell us a little bit about what you see the role. I mean, the projections, of course, I've only now seen it on video. I'm looking forward to see them in person because I wasn't able to get to France during the pandemic. But how do you see the role of these projections in helping you tell the story?
Alors, I decided to replace the traditional drawing, painting of the Swan Lake originally, and to make it a moving painting in a certain way. And for that, I was thinking not to shot film, but to ask to an artist of animation, like, the people, comment on dit animated image, then we can really go very far in the image. For example, if we want an explosion, if you do a movie, then you have to do the explosion and to film it. But in the animation, you just draw the explosion and you can see it. And I like the idea that it's speaking about reality, but it's with imaginary tools. Yeah.
Great. Well, I really have just one last question, and was thinking about this. A number of people in the audience will have seen the traditional classical ballet of Swan Lake, and some will not have ever seen the story or experienced it. So before they attend Swan Lake, is there anything you think audience members need to know to get ready to receive the work, to kind of have that context, or so that they go in and say and have a sense of what they're going to experience?
Finally, it's very simple. The story is about a kind of magician, a wizard. Yes,
a wizard. Yeah.
Okay, I start again. The story is based on a very simple theme. You have a wizard who are also industrial and financial guy, let's say, and he see that there is petrol around the lake, and there is a woman, a young girl, who are like Greta Thunberg, let's say, a kind of Greta Thunberg, and he decided to transform this girl on a swan, then he has the hand free to do all the things for the petrol, you know. Yeah. And after that, the young prince meet this scene, and after it's exactly the same story than the traditional one. Yeah.
So good, yeah. No, that's a wonderful sense of how it's placed, which of course that placement in our, you know, is contemporary and different than the placement, but then the story evolves in the same way, as you say.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we are, as you know, we're going to have a gala evening with a private performance for our donors and patrons on Saturday night, and then we'll have the matinee performance the next day. And everybody is incredibly excited that we can celebrate our 20th anniversary with you the way we celebrated our 10th anniversary. So any other final thoughts before we leave?
No, just I'm very happy to be back in Davis. Then all the souvenir I had was wonderful, and I'm sure it will be a new creation of souvenir.
Absolutely. We'll all remember it beautifully. Well, thank you so much for taking the
Thank
time.
you,
I know,
thank you.
you're at the end of your day. We're at the beginning of ours.
Okay.
And Emmanuel, thank you too.
Thank you, Dan.
Merci, Manuel.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much. And we'll see you next month, or in
Yeah.
a few weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye. Have a great